Hi, and welcome back to our Mini Quilter Support videos. In the previous video, Angelique, showed you how to set up your mini quilter straight from the box. Now I'm going to show you how to prepare your domestic machine for quilting. I'm also going to show you how to make your first quilt sandwich and how to load it on the frame. So let's get started. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to clean and oil your machine as recommended by your manufacturer. So please be sure to check your manufacturer's instructions for cleaning and oiling. Next, you're going to want to change your needle. You're going to want to go to a quilting type needle opposed to your 9014, which is for piecing, if that's what you had on there. And so either a 116 or a 110/18, depending on the thickness of your fabric. I am going to choose the 116. Again, check your manual for how to change your needle on your domestic machine. Load your bobbin. If your machine requires you to adjust your bobbin tension, please do that as well. And begin threading your machine. Another thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to drop your feed dogs. So my machine has a button on the side for dropping my feed dogs. So you can see now my feed dogs are recessed because I'm going to be controlling the movement of the machine, not my feed dogs are not going to be controlling my stitching. And you're also going to want an attachment that is for free motion quilting. So mine looks like this. For my machine, I've seen them where they're a little like oblonged on the Brothers because I've done some free motion on the Brothers, but something that's going to allow you to kind of go over them. I've seen ones that are like Echo Feet or very much like our Glide Foot, so it does depend on your machine and your manufacturer of what's going to fit on that. So you're going to want to attach that particular foot. And then in order for me to thread mine, I do have to drop this because it blocks the needle hole. So I do put my presser foot down to add the thread to the needle. All right, now that I have everything threaded, it's time to check my stitch length and make sure that everything is how I want it. So I usually just take a scrap piece of batting and material, place it underneath there. Go through the same process as I would if I had it on the frame by bringing up my bobbin. And we're going to take a few practice stitches and adjust the speed of our machine. Now, my machine has a button where I don't need to use a foot pedal. If your machine doesn't have that and you do need to use a foot pedal, that's fine, but mine doesn't require it, so I'm not going to have that. I'm just going to use my button to get it started. Just check both sides if I like my tension, and it looks pretty good. If not, adjust your tension, again, following the guidelines of your manufacturer. All right, so I think the machine is prepped. It's time to put it back on the mini quilter. You're going to need a quilt top. You're going to need some backing and batting, and I'm going to show you how to cut your backing and batting in order to get it to a good size for your quilt top. So I'm going to start with my backing. I'm just going to move my batting to the side, and I'm going to lay my backing out so that the right side is down. Next, I'm going to go ahead and lay out my quilt top or my practice panel, and I want to make sure that I have 8 inches on all sides. So if you're cutting, think 16 and then center it. I just find it a little bit easier to get closer to 8 on both sides. So having a little ruler, a little bit more is fine, but a minimum of 8. So I have the top pretty much decided on where it needs to be. So I can move all of this forward and get 8 at the bottom and cut off the excess. You can leave it, but since you're working on the mini quilter, I think you'll find it a little bit easier to deal with than to have extra fabric that you have to roll up. And if you would rather, you can use leaders or make your own leaders. If you have some excess fabric or some sheets laying around at home, you could use that instead. I'm going to do the same thing with my batting. So I'm just going to get this stuff out of the way for a minute. We'll need that in the next step. And I won't really need my quilt top anymore because my backing is going to let me know about the size that I need. So I'm just going to set my quilt top to the side and make sure I have a piece of batting big enough. Now, if you do decide to use a leader or like a sheet or something like that because you didn't quite have enough fabric, your fabric does still need to be bigger, as does your batting, than your quilt top. Because when you are actually doing your quilting, what's going to happen is you get some natural shrinkage from adding the stitching. So you always need at least a few extra inches in terms of the difference between that batting and backing. And then I like to just take my backing and put it on my piece of batting or my roll of batting so I can get a good length. It's going to be a little bit wider, that's fine. I'm not going to worry about cutting that off on the sides because it's just a little bit wider. It's not really going to be in my way, and that will all get cut off when we finish the quilt. Just be sure to smooth out your backing so that you don't cut anything too short because you had a big wrinkle or something in there or it was really crooked. And let's go ahead and cut off our excess. Now that we have all of our pieces, it's time to start assembling our quilt sandwich. So I'm going to get my batting out of the way here, and again, we're going to start with our backing. If you have a lot of wrinkles, then you're going to want to press it, and I really should press this, but I'm pretty good at setting up my quilt sandwich really tight. So, and then I'm going to, again, notice that I put my backing, again, where it's face down, so the wrong side is facing up, and now I'm going to add my batting. All right, so I want to make sure that I lay my batting so that it is the right side is facing up and the scrim side is facing down. So this one here, if you flip it over, it will feel a little bit rougher on the back side, so it's going to grip on the bottom. But another way that you can tell is if you look at the top, when they make certain types of batting, it's actually, there's like a sheet or the scrim, and they're pushing in this material. And so there's a little needle that kind of runs through, and the top side will have the needle hole going like it's been punctured down, right? Whereas the bottom side will have the excess part of the hole sticking up. So that's how you can tell. And then we're going to center this on our backing, or if it's a little bit larger, then we'll center the backing on it. I like to kind of grab and shake to get it started. You want to smooth your batting on, because you don't want any lumps. If your batting has large wrinkles in it, you can iron that out. Check what your construction material is made out of to determine the heat of your iron. If it's got some polyester in it, then you're going to want to use a lower heat iron than if it's 100% cotton. I also want to make sure that my backing is staying smooth as well as I smooth out the top layer. So I'm kind of feeling for both. Right, so this is where that 8 inches is really going to matter. So I'm going to get my quilt top. Quilt top is going to face up. If you want, you can mark with a erasable pen or even a little pencil, because this is going to get covered anyway, so that you don't have to worry so much about what happens to your top. And I'll double check at the top here, make sure I've got plenty of room, and I do, and I look pretty square. So now I'm ready to baste. You have a couple choices in basting. I like to pin baste to get it started. You can pin baste the whole thing, or you can just pin baste the top, because your frame, the Mini Quilter, is going to help manage your fabric for you, and you're going to be moving it, and this is going to allow you to smooth out those layers as you go. So start by smoothing out the top, and you want to, and you can use, these are basting pins, so they're like safety pins, but they're a little bit more curved, but you can use straight pins. So that's if I just want to kind of pin base the top. If I'm worried about the sides, especially since the Mini Quilter is a smaller frame, I would probably do just a couple of the sides along the very top here, just to kind of help me keep all my layers together for when I move it. All right, so that would just be the top. Now let's pretend I didn't do the top. If I want to fully pin baste, then it's best to start in the center. And so you would start and you would pin here. And then you would smooth out your layers, both directions, and pin as you go. It just means that you're going to have to remove those pins as you do your quilting. But I actually find that with the hoop frame, you don't have to do as much pinning, just doing the top. Another option too is, and I always start with pin basting, but I could also sew baste. So once I get it pin basted, if I want to, I can take this to my machine and I could sew along the edge and along the top. And then smooth out as I kind of go. I usually don't want to baste the whole thing unless it's like a really small piece that I'm quilting. I prefer to just kind of get that smoothed out when I'm doing the machine quilting. But I'll get the little parts here started so it's nice and secure on here. Another option is spray basting. So spray basting comes usually in a can, and it's a water type or water soluble glue, spray glue that you can do. And so how you would spray baste, and we're just gonna kind of pretend that I have it, is you spray baste each layer. So you would start at the top of your quilt or the bottom of your quilt, and I usually would roll each of these layers back separately. And then you would spray, and then you would fold your batting back, and while it's still tacky, you're smoothing it out, just like we did when we were setting this up. And you'll feel it, it will still come up, because it'll still be tacky, it won't be fully adhered yet, it's not dry. And you just get all your wrinkles out, just like we did before, and that's gonna hold it all in place. And then you're going to do the next thing with this layer. So you're going to spray the top of your batting, and you're going to spray your quilt, and you're going to roll that back and again smooth that layer on. And you'll do that all the way through the whole quilt. Okay, so now that I've got the front basted, I want to get this to my frame. So the easiest way that I find, and also for storing my quilts until I'm ready to do it, is to use one of these foam pool rollers. And I'll simply just place it on here and start rolling up my quilt from the bottom. You want to roll it from the bottom, so I flipped my quilt around to do that. And just kind of smooth it as I go, just so I don't add more wrinkles. And this now is going to put the top of my quilt up here and the part that I'm going to use to put onto the frame. And if I'm not going to use it right away, one of the other great things about the foam noodles, I can stab them with a couple of pins, and it's going to hold my fabric and everything together, and I can go store it in the corner and it's ready to go. So next we're going to load our frame. The Mini Quilter is so small, it's easy to store and easy to put back on the table when I'm ready to do my quilting. Remember to take your clamps off your take-up rail. Loosen your back screws there. And this time, because it's partially on, I don't even have to completely remove it. I'll just slide it so it's out of the way. Put my carriage back on. Now I'm ready to move my machine back on. If you'd like to learn more about assembling your Mini Quilter, please check out our previous video on assembly. Okay, so we have our machine on here. We have the quilt sandwich that we prepared. The next thing you're going to want to do is remove all of the clamps from your Mini Quilter and just set them to the side. You're also going to want to remove this center one for now. Now we're going to bring over our quilt sandwich. Remember when I rolled it so that the front of my quilt sandwich would be exposed. So we'll take our pins out. If your quilt is a little short on the sides. You can use the optional bungees. The way you would use them is you'd have your side clamps like this. These come on your frame and they just slide on there. So as we get to doing some actual quilting and we're moving to the edge, I may need them and I'll show you how to use them at that time. So you want to move your machine so it's a little bit out of your way. And you're going to start to unroll your quilt sandwich a little bit. Make sure you get the backing and the batting, and you're going to tuck that underneath the foot of your domestic machine. And so I'm just going to get this on here. You'll notice that the clamps come in two sizes. The larger size is for the take-up rail. So just take a peek, make sure that your one bungee is over, and go ahead and attach. You'll find it easiest if you go in from the side and twist to flatten out. I'm going to do that on the other side as well. Make sure that it's there and give that a twist. Now I'm going to start to roll my quilt out. And right now I'm just going to set this here so that I don't have to do all the unrolling. And the next thing I want to do, so once I've done the back ones, you want to do the front ones next. Your front and side ones are the same size, so just smooth out your quilt layers. And again, we're going to go in from the side to put that clamp on and give it a little bit of a twist. Next, we're going to put the side ones on. Be careful that you make sure you get it in between because the clamp does take up most of this and you don't want to try to clamp it over that thicker part there. And then come in from the side again, give it a twist. Notice I'm twisting towards the center of the frame and the center of my quilt sandwich. So next, I already have this on the roll, so you can actually just leave this on the roll. And if you don't want to worry about those bungees, you don't have to for that beginning part because I know from doing this that I'm not going to have a huge amount. But I could also take the roll out if I want, and just to save me some trouble, I'll just slide that out, and that will give me a little bit more space and I didn't have to roll it from the floor. You find your bungees underneath, wrap them around. If they're a little tight, you'll see we have the easy slide there so that you can loosen them. And they go right in the clip there. Same thing on the back. Add that one. If you'd like to use the optional bungee, you would add it here before you get started. Going to wrap that one around and it just slides right in there and it's nice and secure. I want to check the height frame now that I have something on here, and I'm just going to move my machine around a little bit, make sure it's not dragging, and it does seem like it's a little bit low, so I'm going to go back through and readjust my height. So we're going to try 6 now that I actually have the quilt on there, and remember to do that for all 4 of the towers. I also like to take a peek underneath since it's a hoop frame and just make sure that all my layers look smooth. And I'm also going to do a tension test. So there's a couple ways that you can do it. I usually don't have a coin on me, but if you want to do the penny test, you can refer to the manual that came with your mini quilter and how to use a penny to check your tension. But I like to do the finger test, so it should be nice and smooth underneath, and there should be a little bit of give or a little bit of play in that, and I should be able to just grab the tip of my finger when I have it underneath there. What I don't want is a trampoline. It needs to be tight enough that I don't have wrinkles underneath it, but I don't want it so tight that literally I can just bounce on it, because if it's too tight, that's going to affect the tension and it's going to be really hard to not end up with thread breakage. So there's kind of a happy medium in that tension. As long as you're smooth, you can kind of grab a little bit and you got that little bit of play. We're just going to double check that we have space. I'm going to drop my foot. And so what I'm checking to make sure is that I am not dragging my cord. Right? So I have a nice long extension cord and lots of room for it to move around so that I don't get hung up when I'm doing my quilting. So our frame is loaded. Now you're probably excited to get started on how to quilt, but before we do that, we need to learn about our quiltable area. So in the next video, I'm going to show you how to take the little practice grid that we have here that comes with your machine, as well as this ruler, to get you all set up to learn about your quiltable area, as well as how to get started in zone quilting. So please join me for that. If you have any questions about tension, we do have a troubleshooting guide on our website, graceframe.com, under resources, or feel free to contact our tech support at support@graceframe.com for more information. See you in the next video.